was always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
It's always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags, your destination for all things Jacksonville, all things Jaguars, all things Duval. Today we are going to, it makes me so happy, guys. You know the season, a month away. We're about to have football again for the preseason in just a week. And after that, there's not going to be a Sunday without football until February. If we could just soak that in for a moment, because it has been so long. The summer has been hot. I miss my pumpkin cider from Whole Foods, but it's okay. The fall is almost here. It's going to get cooler. We're going to get football. And we're going to get everything we love about fall starting again. So let's dive right in, because we are here to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, the number one thing that we have to discuss is I'm going to talk about the scrimmage game, and I'm going to talk about the Jaguars depth chart. So last week, I got a chance to go to the Jacksonville scrimmage game. Again, I now live in Jacksonville. Only took 2 years after I started this podcast to finally move to the city where I cover the same team. But again, I am from Florida, born and raised in Florida, just lived in Charlotte for a few years, and now we're back in Florida, and we decided, why not live in the city with the best team in the NFL, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So because we live in Jacksonville, the scrimmage, it was great to go there. Still just so crazy hot. I cannot wait until we put the Stadium of the Future and get that dome up. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I am ready, because it was a scorcher. So after walking in like 90-degree weather to get there for the game, it was free. So if you ever get a chance to go to a scrimmage, it actually was pretty cool to watch. So I got a few takeaways that I'm going to break down. And then, like I said, we're going to move right into that unofficial depth chart. So my first takeaway, Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter are the next superstar wide receiver duo. I'll say that again, in case you didn't already realize. Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter are the next superstar wide receiver duo. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on Travis Hunter, obviously, but you can't forget about Brian Thomas Jr. The man finished for about 8 or 9 grabs and 2 touchdowns, and everything he did just looked effortless. And Trevor looked so confident throwing to him. Stopping these two guys is going to be tough. I think there's a good chance they could ascend the wide receiver duo rankings and climb all the way to the top. They might be the best by the season's end, because I think Travis Hunter is faster than T. Higgins. They won't, Brian Thomas Jr., I don't think he'll get to Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase levels of good, but Travis Hunter is going to surpass almost every wide receiver too. I think on most teams, he'll probably end up being a wide receiver 1. Because again, he did a lot of that tough work between the hashes. His route running looked pristine. And again, it's only scrimmage, it's only a practice. And I think the ones were going against the 2s on offense, and the same thing on defense. Our defense was playing the 2s. And that I don't always love, because you don't really get a chance to really see how good these guys are. I mean, like another Jaguars host mentioned, iron sharpens iron. Let's see if Walker Little can block John Tynes Allen. Let's see if Tyson Campbell can lock up Brian Thomas Jr. Those are questions that we need answered, because they're going to face competition in the NFL a lot stiffer than Monteric Brown and DeAndre Prince. And DeAndre Prince even had a nice breakup on Brian Thomas Jr. He was very good coverage. Brian Thomas Jr. didn't get separation on that play, and Trevor still tossed it up to him. So again, we'll see exactly what happens in the future at some point. But for right now, it's a superstar duo, right? We're going to put up points. Hopefully we don't become the Bengals where we can only put up points and just can't stop anybody. Though looking at our defensive depth chart, it doesn't look great. But we're going to put up points, and I think that's going to help Trevor Lawrence get back on track and kind of quell the narrative about what kind of quarterback Trevor Lawrence is. And I think these are the 2 kind of receivers that he needs. Because again, we all thought this would be him when we had Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk. But Calvin Ridley wasn't always where he was supposed to be. Brian Thomas Jr. is where he's supposed to be. And I think he's no one would contest that he's a much better receiver than Calvin Ridley already going into his second year. So, again, in case you had any doubt, Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. are superstars. No other way to put it. Next up, I would say watch out for Jarrian Jones and watch out for Tyson Campbell. I think Tyson Campbell is in danger of losing his next up. I think Tyson Campbell might be in danger of losing his starting spot to Jarrian Jones because Jarrian Jones, I didn't see him allow a single pass. Maybe he did. I'm not sure, but from what I got, he was locked down on the boundary all night. He made some really nice pass breakups. There was a couple times where he was in there against the ones, Trevor Lawrence, like against the higher competition, and he had some really nice pass breakups. And I don't know if we're ever going to see that 2022 Tyson Campbell because that hamstring appears like it's still bothering him. He just seems like he's a little too slow. And he gave up a couple of really big plays to the twos, Joshua Cephus, other guys. And again, maybe it's partly defensive scheme and things like that. But as I'm watching this scrimmage, Jarrian Jones looks like a starter and Tyson Campbell looks like his backup right now. Again, don't know how accurate that is with the scheme and everything. I'm rooting for Tyson Campbell because we need a starting cornerback in the worst way. And Jordan Lewis made a nice play in the nickel. And I have no doubt that when they switch to nickel and Jordan Lewis goes into the nickel, Jarrian Jones will hold it down on the boundary. And again, Tyson Campbell's going to get hurt. So I'm thinking they'll probably end up using Travis Hunter kind of like as Tyson Campbell's backup because he tends to get hurt every year. But again, for right now, I would say Tyson Campbell's probably looking over his shoulder because Jarrian Jones is coming for that spot. And technically, I think right now on the depth chart, Jones is well, let me see. Yeah, no, Jarrian Jones is backing up Tyson Campbell. So I could see that switching very soon, honestly, very soon. And only putting Tyson in when Jordan goes into the nickel and have maybe Jordan starting on the other boundary. I don't know for sure. I don't really get to see Jordan Lewis that much as a boundary cornerback, so I don't know how good he is there or how they want to use him. And then obviously Travis Hunter is going to factor into that somehow. So we'll see how all of that plays out. But for right now, on the scrimmage game, Jarrian Jones was the better cornerback than Tyson Campbell. And I really hope I'm wrong because I want them both to be as good as possible. But on that scrimmage game, Jarrian Jones was the better cornerback. Next up, watch out for Joshua Cephus. Joshua Cephus was, because when the twos are going against the ones on defense, it's hard to get anything going because you're going against, the ones, starters. Teams are going to be starting against other NFL teams. But Joshua Cephus, his name kept popping up as making plays. And so we'll kind of talk about that as we investigate the depth chart because they're kind of related. Actually, I kind of split them up, but they're kind of related. But Joshua Cephus kept making plays. He made a couple of big catches, one really nice one, and he was being covered by Tyson Campbell. And that's why I say I'm kind of worried about Tyson Campbell's spot on that defense. But I see Joshua Cephus, and he looks like he's making a good case to be on that 53-man roster with all the plays that he was making. He was consistently open. And like I say, he might end up making the roster as that. And he's a second-year player. I don't think we drafted him last year. I think he went undrafted. But out of all the skill players on offense and everything, he stood out to me the most. I think if we talk about Trevor Lawrence from the scrimmage game, mostly sharp. I would say he had a couple of throws that, was kind of unsure. Like, again, he had one where DeAndre Prince made a nice throw on the ball, but from the angle that I saw it at, it didn't look like Brian Thomas Jr. could even get open. Now, I don't know if Brian Thomas Jr. was supposed to be open and Trevor just threw it thinking that he would be open, or if he looked over there and saw he wasn't, or maybe Brian Thomas Jr. ran the. But whatever the reason was, whether it was on Brian Thomas or Trevor Lawrence, he was not open. So that when that ball came to him, DeAndre Prince made a nice play on it, but I think he almost could have picked it off. And then Trevor had one bad interception in the end zone. Threw the ball. It wasn't double coverage, but the safety was too close on the other side for that ball. I feel like as soon as he let it go, he knew, that was a bad pass. And I would have loved to see if it was someone like Caleb Ransaw, who made the play, maybe ran over, showed off some skill that got us a little excited for the defense. But it was a player named McPherson, and it was a good play by McPherson, but he's not going to be coming in and starting for us at any position, right? So there's no reason to really be excited. Like, oh yeah, he made a good play on the ball. Like Jordan Lewis made a good pick. It was like, oh okay, cool. That's something that Jordan Lewis can bring to us. We're probably not going to see this player on the field. I don't even think he's listed on the depth chart. So, and eventually this roster will have to be cut down. And so I'll make my roster predictions coming up pretty soon. But when we look at those main three things is how I'll sum up the practice scrimmage game. Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter are superstars. Joshua Cephus might end up rounding out that wide receiver room with his strong performance. Tyson Campbell is probably going to have to look over his back for Jarrian Jones the entire year, maybe even starting in the preseason, because Jarrian Jones was a better cornerback than Tyson Campbell was on scrimmage. And lastly, like I said, Trevor Lawrence, mostly sharp, threw a lot of really nice, beautiful passes, a couple of questionable decisions here and there. Protection looked like it was holding up well, but again, you're going against twos. So I would expect the protection to hold up against twos. Same thing. Pass rush was hitting home, a lot of run stuffing, but again, it was against two, so it's kind of hard to say. The running back room looks about as fine as possible. Tank Bigsby, you could tell that he wanted to run a lot harder, but in a scrimmage, you don't tackle as hard or anything like that. So Tank Bigsby looks like he's ready to go. So Travis Etienne, I don't know if he'll end up getting played. I did like a lot of plays that LaQuint Allen was making. He was picking up a lot of blitzes really well and holding up really well in pass coverage. And I think Tank Bigsby is getting better at it. I saw him pick up some, and that will be the difference between Tank Bigsby, I think, and Travis Etienne. Because again, Travis Etienne, he can't block guys. If a linebacker's coming at him, Travis Etienne is probably going to get thrown aside. So having a guy like Tank Bigsby and another guy like LaQuint Allen who can block is huge. It's huge, especially for blitzes and things like that. Because there were a couple of open blitzes, open rush, free rusher, safety moments. And I don't know who was in the game, if they were running four wide receivers or what, but Trevor didn't have anyone to pick it up, so we had to just throw it away. So I like seeing that out of the running backs because I think that's the element that we're missing from our running backs. And to me, that alone is enough to make Tank Bigsby the starter and Travis Etienne more of like the scat back. So we'll see exactly how that will shake out. So now let's kind of dive into the depth chart. Like I said, I kind of talked about it a little bit. I'll mainly talk about like my surprises. No surprises on the offensive line. And this is for against the preseason against the Steelers. So it looks like the starters probably aren't going to change. I wouldn't expect any change in the starters, but we might see some changes on the second and third string and fourth string based upon how players play during the preseason, if they end up staying with the team or not. So start with the offensive line. No surprise. Walker Little, Ezra Cleveland, Robert Hainsey, Patrick McCarry, Anton Harrison are all going to start. Those were the guys kind of penciled in as starters at the beginning of training camp and everything. There was some talk that Fred Johnson could push Walker Little. I don't see it, but Fred Johnson is listed as the second tackle behind Walker Little, and that makes sense. I think he'll end up staying in that spot. We have Wyatt Malum backing up Ezra Cleveland. Again, there was some talk about him usurping Cleveland, and maybe we'll see that towards the end of the year. But right now, I still think it was a very solid pick, and I like that we have him. We still have Luke Fortner on the team as the backup safety behind Robert Hainsey. Kind of surprised that he ended up beating out Jonah Monheim, so we'll have to see if Luke Fortner stays as the second string center, and if they decide, because I don't think they're going to keep three centers. So either Jonah Monheim is going to have to beat out Luke Fortner, or he'll end up on the practice squad. So that's an interesting battle to see in the preseason. Chuma Edgoa looks like he's the main backup for Patrick McCarry. Again, not really a surprise. He was kind of drafted. He was signed to be that, a guard, offensive line flexibility. But I'm seeing Patrick McCarry or Chuma Edgoa. So that means they like him so much that he might start over Patrick McCarry. And hopefully that means that Edgoa has been playing well rather than McCarry's playing poorly. But we'll have to see. And again, I would wonder okay, well, could Chuma start over Ezra Cleveland? Because, I expect with the money that we gave Patrick McCarry that he would be playing better than Cleveland. So I guess we'll see. That's another storyline to keep in mind. And then Anton Harrison looks like his backup will be Cole Van Lannon. So my guess is the Jaguars are going to keep 10 offensive linemen 10 starters and 10 backups. So that means right now Javon Foster, John Meinheim, and Sal Wormley are all in danger of losing a roster spot. From what I hear, Javon Foster was the guy that I wanted us to draft. Evidently, he's not making as much of an impact. They got him as on the depth chart as a guard, and I think he was drafted as an offensive tackle. So he'll have to try to fight his way in. But from what I hear, he's just not really there with everybody. Maybe if they choose to keep 11 offensive linemen, one of these guys will sneak in. But my guess is that it would probably be 10. So in that case, yeah, Jonah Meinheim. And I don't know much about Sal Wormley. I would assume he's kind of a practice squad guy that's just getting a chance to compete for the roster. So not much of a surprise as to who the starters are. The backup position battles are a little bit more interesting. So we'll see that out during the preseason. Wide receivers, again, no surprise on the starters. Travis, Brian, De'Ami Brown. And De'Ami Brown made some nice plays on the scrimmage as well. I think it seems like that playoff performance wasn't a fluke. And I like because we don't have him in a featured role. He's in a complimentary role. He's supposed to complement Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. And I think he'll do that. I think he'll end up doing that. I also think that we may run a lot of two-back sets because I think that's something that Liam Cohn did a lot with Baker Mayfield in Tampa. So De'Ami Brown, like he's not necessarily like the third most important weapon on this team. He's more like the fifth or sixth, which is pretty good to have a weapon like that, even if he's your fifth or sixth option in the game. So next behind them, of course, we have Parker Washington, who again, nice scrimmage, had a nice return, made a couple of nice catches. I think he was probably hoping to break into the starting lineup. I think right now Travis Hunter is listed as the starting slot receiver, and Parker Washington will be behind him. So again, I'm sure he was probably hoping to be a starter this year, but I'm still glad to have Parker Washington. I still think he'll be a fantastic backup, in case we need to put him in pitch situations. Joshua Cephus, no surprise that he's second team behind Brian Thomas Jr., probably on that X wide receiver position. Because again, he was making plays and he was looking like, he belonged in that X spot. And then next on the depth chart is Trenton Irwin, who's behind De'Ami Brown. I didn't see much of Trenton Irwin during the scrimmage, so it will be interesting to see. Wide receivers wise, I'm thinking we'll probably end up keeping 4. Wide receivers wise, we'll probably end up keeping about 6, would be my estimate for how many wide receivers that we keep. So that means right now, Austin Trammell, Eli Pancol, Chandler Brayboy, Darius Lassiter are all kind of, in that danger zone of potentially just being on the practice squad rather than making the primary roster. I'd have to see more plays from Trenton Irwin. Beautiful thing about having Travis Hunter, again, we get an extra spot on our depth chart. But my estimate was always going to be in a roster of 53 guys. I estimated Jaguars are going to keep 25 offense and 25 defense and count Travis Hunter as part of the offense. So I think I don't think we're going to keep 7 wide receivers. I think we're going to keep 6. And I think that's going to end up being that last spot. I would say those top 5, the top 4 are definitely locked up. I would kind of say I feel like Joshua Cephus maybe locked up that 5th spot with his solid performance in scrimmage. He's got to keep it going, but it looks like he kind of solidified himself there. So then we'll have Austin Trammell, Eli Pancol, Darius Lassiter, and Chandler Brayboy all vying for that 6th spot that Trent Irwin currently has. Like I said, right now it looks like it's Trent Irwin's spot to lose, but I don't think I saw enough of him from the scrimmage to feel like he really has it locked up. And I often see a lot of plays from Austin Trammell during the preseason. Every Jaguars, he made some plays during the scrimmage. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I think Austin Trammell might have the inside track if they end up shaking that up with that last 6 position. But those are the wide receivers for each spot on that depth chart. And then, of course, we have the tight ends. Again, not much of a surprise here. If you keep 2 tight ends, you got Brenton Strange as the starting tight end. He made some nice plays. Beautiful touchdown catch. It was a touch pass that he was able to catch with his hands, showing off those great hands that Brenton Strange has. I like him so much because, again, he can block. He worked on his blocking so much and also having good hands. So that means, again, I do miss Evan Ingram, and I wish we had found a way to keep him. But when we had Evan Ingram in the game, he was a willing blocker, but not necessarily a solid blocker. So you kind of knew whether it was going to be a pass or a run or what Evan Ingram was doing, going out for a route. But with Brenton Strange, it's nice because you don't necessarily know what he's doing. He could be blocking for a run or he could be going out for a pass, which means he could fake block and then sneak out for a pass. Evan Ingram couldn't do that as much because it's kind of like, I don't really know if he's going to be blocking anyway. So that allows us to do a lot of trickery with Brenton Strange because he's good in both areas. So I think that's also why the Jaguars put so much faith in him and let Evan Ingram go. But either way, his backup is going to be Quinton Morris, looks like. And then, of course, the 2 tight ends we signed, Johnny Munt and Hunter Long, to play the primary blocking tight end position, where they'll probably be playing in that primary backup tight end position. So my estimate would be that we keep probably 3 tight ends, because if I look at it, 6 receivers, I think we'll end up keeping 4 running backs, and 3 tight ends and 2 quarterbacks. So that'll be about 25 on the offense if there's 10 offensive linemen. So I don't know if Quinton Morris will end up making the team. We'll see, because I think Johnny Munt and Hunter Long are going to kind of both back up Brenton Strange, even though, you have 2 tight ends listed. So basically Hunter Long is going to back up Brenton Strange and Johnny Munt. So that would be my estimate. I don't think there's Patrick Herbert is another guy on the roster, Justin Herbert's brother. I think Sean Bowman, and John Copenhaver, didn't really see a lot of plays from any of them during the scrimmage. I'd probably estimate, probably going to be Brenton Strange, Johnny Munt, and Hunter Long, the guys that they signed in free agency. And they didn't make too many plays in the scrimmage, but we saw enough from Brenton Strange to feel good. But man, an injury to Brenton Strange would very much so cripple our tight end position and kind of cripple our offense. So the depth behind it is not as strong as you might think. So that's something that we got to really keep in mind as we go into the season. Quarterback position, I think Nick Mullins has a chance to be the starter. Just playing. So Nick Mullins is going to end up being the backup to Trevor Lawrence, of course. And I think we're only going to keep 2 quarterbacks throughout the season. John Wolford and Seth Hannigan probably going to end up being signed to the practice squad. Nick Mullins made some nice plays during the scrimmage, but he also reminded us why he's a backup quarterback. And so, depending on how it shakes up, if there's maybe a quality backup quarterback that just ends up on the market, someone that, was starting and is now not, like, I don't know, if Kirk Cousins was out there, I would be making some phone calls, because I'm not even sure if Nick Mullins is going to be better than Mac Jones was. But hey, if a big name like Kirk Cousins that was supposed to start, or Joe Flacco, if he ends up being the odd man out of the Browns, Nick Mullins' performance didn't make me feel so good that I wouldn't give those guys a ring, right? So, and also other preseason games, other news, those would be things to watch out for. Is Kirk Cousins going to stay with the Falcons? And, what's going to happen with Joe Flacco, if he's going to end up staying there or not. So those would be some things that I would keep my eyes and ears kind of peeled on, even in the Giants, situation, having Russell Wilson. I think, who else do they have? Not Tyrod Taylor. Russell Wilson, Jameson Winston, and Jackson Dart. If one of those guys end up falling off the depth chart or get beat out, I think I wouldn't mind having Jameson Winston or Russell Wilson backing up Trevor Lawrence over Nick Mullins. So again, we'll see, but that'd be something I would definitely keep my eyes and ears on. Next, look at the defense. Some surprise there. Again, we already talked about the cornerback position, so I guess I'll start there. Right now, we got Tyson Campbell listed as a starter and Jordan Lewis across from him. Of course, in nickel situations, Jordan Lewis looks like he'll probably take over as a starter there. But officially listed on the depth chart, we have 2 cornerback spots. My guess is we would keep 3 cornerbacks. So, and right now we have listed Tyson Campbell, Jordan Lewis, and then Jarrian Jones, Monteric Brown, and then Levi Wallace, Christian Boswell, DeAndre Prince, Zachariah McPherson, Jabbar Muhammad, and of course, Travis Hunter. So because Travis Hunter only counts once on the depth chart, but he's still listed twice, right now he's listed as the 3rd cornerback, which is a little bit surprising. I didn't expect him to be, I kind of expected him to be ahead of Monteric Brown, maybe behind Jordan Lewis. So for him to come out on the 3rd string for defense is a little bit surprising to me. I think, like I said, I think Jarrian Jones is kind of nipping at Tyson Campbell's heels. But there's no way that the 3 of them don't make the roster. Campbell, Jones, Lewis. I think Monteric Brown will probably make it. So that would be 4 spots: Campbell, Lewis, Jones, Brown. And again, Travis Hunter counts as a wide receiver. So if there's 2 more, like I said, DeAndre Prince had a nice play, and Zachariah McPherson had a nice play during the scrimmage. So they might end up getting those last 2 spots because of those plays that they made. And so we'd be keeping 6 cornerbacks, but really we'd have um but really we'd have well, I think actually no, I think we would keep 5 cornerbacks. Excuse me. I think we would keep 5 cornerbacks, and again, Travis Hunter counts primarily as a wide receiver, but also a cornerback. So I think that last spot will come down to DeAndre Prince and Zachariah McPherson, unless Levi Wallace already has them beaten out. So we'll have 2 listed for every spot. Right now, Levi Wallace is the 3rd string behind Monteric Brown and Jordan Lewis. So I think we'll end up keeping 5 cornerbacks, and then, like you said, Travis Hunter counts both ways. So that'll be an interesting battle to watch. And I don't necessarily think that Prince and McPherson were playing dominantly. They just had 2 highlight reel plays. So that would be something I would continue to watch for as the season kicks off. Next, we have our safety positions. My guess is that we'll probably keep 5 safeties, because here's where you start talking about having a good special teams player. And right now, I think safety is definitely the weakest position by far on our entire team and our defense. So right now we have Eric Murray, Andrew Wingard, Darnell Savage, Antonio Johnson. Eric Murray and Wingard are listed as the starters. Savage and Johnson are listed as the backups. And then Daniel Thomas and Caleb Bransaw are 3rd string. And then 4th string, we got Ryan Lane. We drafted him. And then Cameron Silman Craig. I think Daniel Thomas is kind of a lock because he's been such a good special teamer, gunner. So I don't think a 3rd round pick is not going to make the roster. But right now, depending on how many we keep on that cornerback line, he's kind of in danger, right? So it just kind of depends, because if we kept 10 defensive linemen, 5 linebackers, 5 safeties, and 5 cornerbacks, that would be 25. So maybe we'll only keep 9 defensive linemen, and that's edge and defensive tackle, in exchange to add 1 more safety in, so we could have 6. I could see that maybe happening. So Thomas and Ransaw could make the roster. I'm surprised Antonio Johnson is. I guess it depends on how it does in camp, but again, Antonio Johnson was a starter last year and he did not do very well. But he's still 2nd on the depth chart. And I'm surprised that Darnell Savage wasn't upgraded to a starter. Like I said, Eric Murray was signed to be a starter, but right now looking at this depth chart, it makes me wish that we had drafted Xavier Watts in the 3rd round over Caleb Bransaw when he was still available, because I'm pretty sure Xavier Watts would be top of this depth chart. And I would feel a lot better with him and Eric Murray starting, being backed up by Wingard, Savage, and then Johnson, Thomas. And if we had drafted Ransaw anyway later on, we'd be battling it out for maybe the final spot. Maybe they add a 6th spot. But as it looks right now, like I said, Andrew Wingard, he's a great player. And having him in 3 safety situations is fine. But if he's going to be starting the whole year, that's a position we may have to look at throwing a trade dart at some point in the middle of the year. Moving on to linebackers, because it looks like we're going to be playing 3. So chances are we'll be keeping 6 linebackers. I don't see us only keeping 5. I think there's a good chance we'll be keeping 6. And again, this depth chart is very interesting to me. So we've got, obviously, Foye Oluokun starting at 1, Devin Lloyd starting in the middle. Which again, I didn't know if Devin Lloyd played a lot of middle linebacker. I thought Foye Oluokun played more middle linebacker instead of outside linebacker. But I guess Foye is going to be outside. Devin Lloyd's going to be inside in the middle. And Yasir Abdullah, they have listed as a starter on the other side. I kind of expected that spot to go to Ventrell Miller based upon the way that he was playing. And even after the scrimmage, Ventrell Miller was out there making plays. I didn't see Yasir Abdullah out there making plays. So it's a little bit surprising that Yasir Abdullah is getting the nod over Ventrell Miller. Maybe that's because Ventrell Miller wants to play middle linebacker. I don't know. I figured Chad Muma would make it because, again, he is a special teamer. He's currently backing up Foye Oluokun. And then our Dennis Gardeck is currently backing up Yasir Abdullah. Of course, on the 3rd string, our backups, Jack Kaiser, Branson Combs, and Jalen McLeod. I would expect Jack it looks like it's between, it says Chad Muma or Jack Kaiser, because again, there's a lot of things that will play out. I kind of expected Jack Kaiser to beat out Dennis Gardeck, for that other spot, but looks like Jack Kaiser still has a little bit of an uphill climb in order to make sure that he's on there. Because again, there's no way I think that we'd be keeping more than 6 linebackers. I don't see that happening. I think 6 would be the absolute max, and that's if we're playing a 4-3 defense where we primarily use 3 linebackers on the field at once rather than 2. Like where we're substituting 1 linebacker for a nickel cornerback on some place. So because of that, I would say, like I said, I think that 6th spot with Dennis Gardeck might still be up for grabs. And I'm surprised that Ventrell Miller didn't end up breaking the starting lineup with Yasir Abdullah, because he was making a lot of plays and a lot of tackles when he found himself in the starting lineup. So that's a little bit interesting. But again, I only see 6 happening there. Now, for our defensive line, this one, I do kind of honestly see us keeping 10 guys in the defensive line, because I think we kind of want to stay refreshed and rest and swapping them in and out. But I could see us going down to 9 if we felt the need to have a 6th safety. But again, let's go over the starters. So nose tackle, we've got Devon Hamilton. Defensive tackle, Eric Armstead, obviously starters. Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker starting at both ends. Makes perfect sense there. Jordan Jefferson, I guess, is going to be backing up Devon Hamilton as the nose tackle. And Mason Smith, I guess he's not a nose tackle traditionally, and I don't know if he really plays that position. I kind of expected our defensive tackle starters to be Mason Smith and Eric Armstead. And again, I don't know, maybe Eric Armstead probably doesn't play a lot of nose tackle. Maybe they want a traditional nose tackle there. But I think our 2 best defensive linemen are Eric Armstead and Mason Smith. So depending on how Anthony Campanelli wants to run his defense, we'll have to see exactly how that ends up playing out, because, again, I would like to see Mason Smith and Eric Armstead on the field at the same time. But for right now, like I said, Hamilton is the starting nose tackle. Armstead is the starting defensive tackle. And then Jefferson and Smith are backing them up. So I think the nose tackle depth is a little weak, but the defensive tackle depth is pretty strong, because we have Mason Smith, who could probably be a starter. I love what we did with our defensive ends. I think it was a great move to bring in DeJuan Smoot and Emmanuel Ogbah to back up Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, spell them at times, and maybe allow them to move inside. I feel so much better about our defensive end group compared to last year, because now we've got other guys that can contribute as we're rotating guys in and out, just to catch a spell or things like that. So again, my estimate would be, okay, there's 2 more spots left, and it would be 1 defensive end and 1 defensive tackle who can maybe play nose tackle. So we've got James Carpenter, Tyler Lacey backing up the defensive tackles, and then Danny Strago and Miles Cole backing up the defensive ends, along with Kevy Rose and BJ Green II. Again, none of these guys really stood out during the preseason scrimmage. I think I saw Tyler Lacey make a couple of plays. Didn't really see much from Miles Cole, but I still think he has a good chance to make the roster as that 5th defensive end. And I think Tyler Lacey will end up making it as that 5th defensive tackle. I'm kind of already giving my preseason roster cut down expectations, even though it wasn't really the plan. But just based upon how the scrimmage game shook out and how things will probably go throughout the preseason, that would be kind of my expectation. Obviously, our special teams group, Logan Cook, Cam Little, Ross Mastick, already signed, sealed, delivered. There are guys. One thing I will have to say that I forgot to mention, Cam Little looks fantastic. The man drilled a 58-yarder. You heard that right, 58-yarder. 4 yards behind the record, which is 62, and he kicked it right down the middle, which means he had at least 5, if not 6 yards of leeway. So if he had kicked that exact same ball from 5 yards back, he would have broken the record and nailed it. So I think we should be very happy to have Cam Little. Obviously, Logan Cook and Ross Mastick continue to do their thing. So not really worried about special teams at all. And Parker Washington, like I said, has some good kick returns. So that's kind of how the scrimmage game shook out, and that's kind of how the depth chart shook out. Let me know what you think. Are you surprised? Again, biggest standouts from the depth chart, Travis Hunter being the 3rd string cornerback, couple of surprises in the linebacker room, and couple of surprises on the offensive line. But let me know who you think is going to make it. Let me know if you're excited to see the Jaguars this fall. And again, like I said, so standouts from the scrimmage game, I would say Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, Cam Little for sure, Joshua Cephus. All those guys are making plays, and Jordan Lewis had some standout plays, as well as who was that corner, and Jarrian Jones. Those would be my standout performers from the scrimmage game. Guys that I'm a little more worried about from the scrimmage game, Tyson Campbell. Was a little bit worried for him. I wouldn't say I'm worried about Travis Hunter on defense, but we didn't end up seeing anything from him on defense. And I don't know if he allowed a couple of catches. I think he did. So again, we'll see. I wouldn't necessarily be like overly worried about him. The rest of the players, again, you didn't really see too much. Again, one's going against twos. But like I said, those would be my standout performers compared to guys that I'll be a little bit worried about. So let me know your thoughts, and never forget, it was always the Jags.